I've convinced one of London's biggest estate agents that I'm a reputable landlord looking for tenants for a prime piece of central London real estate, and they're sending a letting agent to meet me. Because, to prove that the London rental market is completely absurd, I'm going to try and convince them to show actual tenants around my campervan. The London rental market has become completely tapped. From landlords renting out their walk-in wardrobes for £1,000 a month, to leaving their tenants without hot water for the weekend, to go on holiday to places where slavery may or may not exist. Renting a flat in London is now a massive headache. And to be honest, I don't think it's always better than living in a van. So I've taken it upon myself to prove this, by looking into the rental market from all angles. Looking around flats and rooms for rent myself, heckling letting agents, becoming a landlord, and attempting to convince a prestigious London property agency to show tenants around my van. I've lived in rented flat shares all over London, except from South East because I'm not mental. And I've also lived in London in my campervan, for which people have called me an idiot, an attention seeker, and a masochist, which I don't think is very fair. Can I get a letting agent to convince a tenant to actually live in my campervan? Or will I fail, meaning first of all that renting in London is completely beyond repair? And more importantly, that I am just an idiot masochist attention seeker who should probably rent a flat. Before I could try and rent out my van, I had to first understand the competition, so I looked up some places to rent. Right, so we're on the flat hunt. Here we've got some rooms. Here's a good one. You get to rent the room from Monday to Thursday, but the landlord needs it for the rest of the week when their kid comes to stay. And that's £800. Great. Oh wow, a private place in Kensington for only £1,000 a month. Oh, that's a parking space. With a few somewhat habitable properties on my shortlist, it was time to call up some estate agents and book in some viewings. However, this proved to be an issue, as after an hour of trying to call estate agents, I couldn't get through once. Estate agents in the rest of the country were mostly fine, so why were they proving so difficult to deal with in London? I noticed one agent had left his mobile number in the comments, so I took the plunge and called him directly, and finally, I got through.
Welcome, Rod. That went this morning, my friend.
What about the one on Acre Lane?
No, Acre Lane was gone before it even went on the website.
Right, Beach Road?
Beach Road. Beach Road, you're funny, man.
After telling me the rooms I wanted to view weren't available, the agent offered me a chance to view some other flats. Now I'd heard of this trick before. They put a too good to be true property on their website, which you call up and inquire about, only to tell you that it's already been rented out, and then give you 2 or 3 inferior properties to look at instead. But in just a few days, I needed to be able to convince a lettings agent to show my campervan to prospective tenants, and I was getting desperate. So I accepted the offer and went to look at some flats. I journeyed out to Wembley to meet the letting agent, and while you may be disappointed I wasn't able to film him, just count yourself lucky that you couldn't smell him. And as he showed me around the mould-infested shoeboxes he called rooms, I was beginning to feel more confident that I'd be able to find someone to rent out my campervan. I left the Wembley flat viewings in desperate need of a shower, but after seeing the Dickensian squalor that people were spending £1,000 a month to live in, it seemed like an actual reality that I might be able to find someone who would pay to live in my campervan in central London. I was nearly ready to begin contacting estate agents about renting out my van, but first I needed to make sure she was ready to show off. So I gave her a deep clean and took some photos to send to different companies. From now on, the van was a cosy studio living space, and was just a C-list celebrity away from being mistaken for the house in the Omaze drawer. The well-equipped kitchen came with a 2-burner hob, a large fridge, and a feature tap, with cupboards boasting ample storage space. The living/dining area is a relaxed chill-out zone, perfect for hybrid working, and when converted into a sleeping area, it boasts a king-sized bed. The property also comes with a toilet, and the many windows give the space a light and airy feel. But the standout feature of the property is a garden, which, depending on where you're parked, can be anywhere you like. My van was now the hottest new addition to the London property market, and it was time to find an estate agent who would rent it out. After how long it took me to get through to someone before, I was wary that I might be in for another long day, but it seemed that the number for landlords was working a bit better.
Hello?
Although, as I spoke to more and more estate agents, I realised this wasn't going to be as easy as I thought.
Yeah, we don't rent out campervans, I'm afraid. We only look at properties in the Borough of Kensington.
Okay. What if I moved the van to Kensington? After getting nowhere, it was clear I had to reassess. If I was going to convince a letting agent to rent out my camper van, I didn't need to sell them on the van. I needed to sell them on myself as a professional landlord who they could do a lot of business with. To convince someone I was a proper landlord, I realised I would need to truly wear the skin of one. I don't know any landlords in real life because I try to surround myself with somewhat decent people. So instead, I looked at comments I'd received from landlords on previous videos. It was clear that landlords view themselves as misunderstood creatures who barely even broke even from their numerous rental properties. They were so sure of their own financial difficulties that I was beginning to think I'd had it wrong about landlords the entire time. After all, if a landlord owns 8 properties and has nothing to show for it, other than the 8 properties they own being paid off for free, maybe they're just as down and out as the rest of us. For a split second, I was able to justify the thought of forcing a family of 3 into homelessness by raising their rent enough to afford my 3rd holiday of the year, which I would draw from to present myself to estate agents as a perfect example of the average UK landlord. I set myself up as the owner of multiple properties, with one problem property in particular I was trying to let out, and that if they could help me get a tenant into this property, then I would be keen to do more business. And I didn't need to wait long for a response, because within the hour, I had a reply from one of London's biggest estate agents, and they had a prospective tenant ready to view my van the very next day. Which brought me right back to here, about to do one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. My nerves are understandable, as letting agents in London have a reputation for sometimes not even turning up. But I needn't have worried, because the estate agent had turned up. And even though he looked like he hadn't washed his suit in a week and smelled like he'd just rolled out of a Simmons bar, he wasted no time telling me about my van.
This usually work, mate?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Extra 300. Yeah, the lights work, extra 50, no problem. How about let's take a look at this storage right here. Oh yeah, lots of storage. Extra 425 on the storage, mate.
Wow. First of all...
Shh, one sec, mate. One sec. Yeah, Hugo, mate, yeah. Yeah, I'm just with a client at the moment. Yeah, let me call you back in 5.
If things break and the tenant's got an issue...
Don't worry about it, don't worry about it. If you leave things long enough, they just fix it themselves. Huh. Have you seen The Wolf of Wall Street, mate?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the best films ever. You can't beat it. Best movie ever.
There wasn't much time for small talk, as the tenant had arrived. Days of work had come down to this. I was just moments away from having a real letting agent from one of the biggest estate agents in London show my self-converted campervan to a real-life prospective tenant, with the aim of getting them to rent and live in it.
And where's the shower?
You've got this bucket here.
Oh, right.
And if you fill up
Okay.
out here, like that,
Okay.
clean as a whistle.
And it comes with a parking space, right?
Oh yeah, lots.
Okay.
Lots.
Okay, cool.
Lots.
The tenant said they needed the afternoon to think about it and left. The agent left too, as he wanted to make it in time for 2-for-1 cocktails at B at 1, and even though I was pretty sure the B at 1 happy hour is in fact all day, something told me he knew that anyway, so I let him go and reflected on what had happened. I couldn't help but feel equal parts hopeless and icked out by the viewing. I couldn't believe how easily the agent had lied to the tenant about my van, just to get the tenant to move in. I was feeling despondent about my own future, and felt bad for friends who are currently locked into similar exploitative contracts in below par flats and houses, which is when I got a call from the agent.
She's really keen, mate. Yeah, I've got a couple more viewings booked in also.
Okay, why do you need to show anyone else around?
Yeah, of course, mate. There's space for another, I reckon.
You want to put 2 people in the van?
Yeah, mate. That's 800.
What, you think you can get 400 quid each?
No, mate. 800 each.
Oh. I couldn't believe it. Not only had I proven that the rental market in London is broken, but I'd somehow managed to be in a position to rent out my campervan for £1,600 per month. It had cost me about £16,000 to build, which means I would have made my money back in less than a year. I was seriously considering leaving London van life behind, taking the money and running. And who could blame me? That's a lot of passive income to turn down. But then I realised that in doing so, I would be becoming everything I'd set out to defeat, A greedy landlord taking advantage of a broken system for profit. So I treated the letting agent in the same way he'd have treated me, by ghosting him for 3 days until he eventually gave up trying to call me. I was happy that I proved just how broken the London rental market was, but while I celebrated my win, there was one last thing to take care of. Because in doing so, I'd left a tenant in the lurch, and if I didn't make things right by her, I'd be no better than the people I was going up against. Hey, I just wanted to say, first of all, sorry that I couldn't rent the van to you. I wish you all the best in your search for somewhere to live, and I hope that everything's good for you in the future. I'm really sorry again.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I was planning to sublet it on Airbnb anyway, to be honest.
Oh. I'd learnt a lot during my attempt to expose the corruption of renting a property in London. I'd learnt that there are people making money in every part of the process, doing things as cheaply as possible to maximise profits, with next to zero accountability for anyone else. And while of course there are lots of landlords and letting agents in London with good intentions, renting in the city is still in complete disarray. But above all, I was just reminded of what we already knew. That at the bottom of the pile, taking all of the blows, were the tenants. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if you're a renter, a homeowner, a landlord. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you again very soon.